The restart of the NBA season is almost here, and today I'm bringing on two super savvy guests to cover it all for you, including some picks of basketball cards that you should invest in. My name is Geoff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies, and at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me on my journey to profit from the hobby we all love. Sports card investors, and welcome to another episode. This is a big one today. I am bringing some amazing talent on the show. We are going to break down the NBA restart, and we have got some under the radar basketball players who could break out in this postseason. You might want to scoop up a couple of their cards now. This is a long episode because we've got a lot of ground to cover, but I promise you're going to enjoy it. It is going to be worth it. I also promise you that you are going to love the Virtual Sports Card Con 2020, which is now less than a week away. Join us next Wednesday, June the 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern for the kickoff of the virtual. That night, we are doing an absolutely free break with Phil from Phil's Pulls. It's going to be StockX night. And then every single night of the virtual, Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday night, every single night, we are bringing in a very prominent breaker who's going to be doing a free break for anybody watching and attending. We got dealers from around the country who are going to be part of it. It's all on this YouTube channel. So right now, subscribe and hit the bell icon if you haven't already, so you know when we go live. And if you haven't registered yet, you go to sportscardinvestor.com and click on Virtual 2020 in the main menu bar. This is 100% free to take part of. It's going to be the best entertainment you're going to find next week. It's going to be awesome. All right, let's get straight into this episode today about the NBA season preview and basketball cards you should buy. I've got two really savvy people. First of all, from 790 The Ticket in Miami, the leading sports radio station in Miami, I have their midday host, Amber Wilson. She is an absolutely amazing sportscaster, has been on it for many, many years, knows a ton about the NBA. She also happens to be my little sister. That's right. My little sister is even more famous than I am in the sports world. And Amber is going to drop some knowledge on you. Also joining the show is NBA Ari. Ari is a good friend of mine. He is an entertainment lawyer in LA and does a lot of high profile entertainment negotiations for shows like Jack Ryan. But more importantly to you today, Ari is a massive NBA fan and follower, and I know Ari's NBA knowledge runs deep because whenever I go to Vegas with Ari, which we get the opportunity to do every year, Ari always works up some crazy basketball 6-team parlay bet that we should make, and it tends to always win. So I know he knows his stuff, and he's about to drop some knowledge on us as well. And throughout the conversation, not only are we going to be talking about NBA teams, but we're also and players, but we're also going to be talking about some card prices. And by the way, at the very end of the episode, Ari drops a very insider knowledge about something that's going to be happening in the upcoming years, a documentary that is being worked on that could provide some more investment opportunity. It's a long episode, but it is worth it. And let's go ahead and start it right now. Welcome, Amber and Ari. Amber and Ari, welcome to Sports Card Investor.
I'm happy to be here, guys. Let's talk some NBA basketball. We almost have sports back for real.
We do.
It's so close. I can taste it. I'm just nervous. I'm nervous.
I am not nervous. I feel confident sports are going to come and it's going to mean good things for the basketball card hobby. And I appreciate both of you joining us today. We got a lot to talk about today. Amber's going to bring a lot of expertise from the Miami Heat and a lot of the other teams in the Eastern Conference. And Ari's a West Coast guy, so I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit about that. By the way, Ari, any 6-team parlays that you think I should bet on here to start the season?
Now, listen, usually when we're in Vegas, we're talking NBA first half bets. You got to do regular season, 3 teams. You want to get a West Coast game, so your whole night you're kind of spacing it out. And then you could double down if things haven't gone your way. I haven't really contemplated what it will be like betting first halves in the bubble. So I got to reassess, and then I'm going to get back to you on that.
You know you're serious when you're betting first half spreads, regular season NBA in the coronavirus world. So that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, let's talk about what we are expecting with this NBA restart and what we think this might do to some sports card prices. So first of all, let's start with the teams who they invited to participate in Orlando, but honestly, they're only going to be there for 8 games and then they're going home. I mean, you got teams like the Suns and the Spurs. You got Washington in the East. I'd put the Kings in that category. I'd put the Trailblazers in that category, although I'm not sure you would, Ari. Talk to me about some of these. Is there anyone there really kind of worth, talking about and looking at?
From my perspective, I think that the Blazers, and I think a lot of people who get paid, to do this for a living, have also thrown out the Blazers as a team with a puncher's chance. Obviously, Dame Lillard is not going to be intimidated by anyone, and I think his type of style of play could translate anywhere, including to some random court with no fans in Orlando. And then beyond that, it's a team that has been nicked by injuries going back to the previous playoffs. And who knows what Nurkic will look like? Who knows what Zach Collins will look like? But the path to win in the West, you need size and to match up with the Lakers. So if, the NBA kind of overloaded their bubble schedule, almost to kind of make sure they don't make it. But I would say of all the teams that are on the outside looking in now, far down on the rankings, I'd be interested in what Amber thinks, but I think the Blazers, have a shot.
Yeah, I mean, they have a shot, theoretically speaking, right? The Pelicans, the Blazers, they have a shot catching up to the Grizzlies. If the Grizzlies go, I think if they go 3-5, then the Pels and the Blazers would have to go 7-1 in order to catch them. So they're in such a power position coming in. They're 3.5 games up on both the Pelicans and the Blazers. It seems unlikely that it's not going to be the Grizzlies making these playoffs, but the NBA had to figure out some way to get Zion Williamson into that bubble, right? Like that's what these teams are there for. I hate that the NBA did this generally. If I was the NBA, I would have just gone straight to the playoffs. The conferences were pretty set. I mean, all right, if we were finishing out the entire regular season, the 15 odd games that they had left, maybe the Pelicans would have been able to catch up to the Grizzlies. They're not going to be able to do it in this weird shortened season scenario that we're in, this really artificial environment that we're in as well. So really, what are we doing? We're just putting a bunch of players theoretically at risk, putting a lot more people into this bubble, and they're only going to be there, like you said, Geoff, for a brief period of time. So I think that really the purpose of all of this was to get Zion Williamson in that bubble. And right now, Zion's not even in that bubble. So I don't know what that means for the Pelicans because Zion left that bubble because of, and I don't like to call it the bubble, by the way. I like to call it on my show the fun place because I feel like the bubble makes it sound like they're in that Pauly Shore movie, that terrible movie.
Biodome?
Biodome. Doesn't it make it sound like Biodome?
How are we? We're 3 minutes in. How are we talking about Biodome? I don't even know what's going on right now. No, let's be honest. It's the Zion is not who the NBA cares about being in the bubble. Let's be honest about who the NBA cares about being in the bubble, ladies and gentlemen. There he is right there. Is it the Zion Williamson plan or is it the Lonzo Ball plan to make sure Lonzo Ball gets to showcase for 8 days? I don't know.
Important question. Is LeVar Ball allowed inside the Bumble/fun place?
That is a good question.
I don't think he is, but that would be fun.
I would hope that he is. I would hope he is prohibited from it. But I agree with you, Amber. However, if you look at the schedule that the NBA has given these teams, they have given the Pelicans by far the easiest schedule. So not did they only create these rules of having these extra teams be able to get in to have this kind of artificial playoff chase, but they also bent the rules in the favor of trying to get the Pelicans, to give the Pelicans a real shot at making that 8th seed. I agree with you. I'm not big on the Trailblazers. I know Ari is. I think the Pelicans are going to give it a run because their schedule's easy. But then they also, by the way, have introduced this crazy rule that even after the 8 games, if one team, if the 8 seed and the 9 seed are within, I think, like 3 games of one another, then they have to do their own mini playoff. Am I right? Am I right, Ari?
No, you got to be up actually 5 games to avoid the mini playoff. So if it's 4 games or less, you're talking a 2-game play-in tournament between the 8th and the 9th seed. And I just pulled up, and now my phone went black, but I pulled up the Pelicans schedule. You start with Utah, then the Clippers. So you got 2 tough games, but the first game, who knows? It's kind of a toss-up. People are getting acclimated. Could win it.
Does Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert still have COVID? They may not even be there. We may not see those guys again.
Well, you know what's funny is when you analyze these schedules, you look at it and you're like, okay, the Pelicans by far have the easiest schedule. The Grizzlies, by the way, out of those 3 teams, by far have the worst. If you're just looking at who are the best teams that they're playing. But I think you could make an argument that that's not necessarily what makes their schedule the hardest, because maybe you'd rather play the better teams that are already in the playoffs and aren't going to care at all. Like, are any of those teams going to be playing their stars? You just had LeBron James say that he doesn't care about the MVP. The MVP race, we can end it on March 11th. Let's just use the regular season up to that point. Well, that means Giannis is probably going to win it, not LeBron. But also it leads me to believe that LeBron ain't playing in these regular season games. Like, why would he, right? And I think that you might see that from a lot of stars. So is that actually the easiest schedule for the Pelicans? Or is the easier schedule, or, the one where you're playing the better teams whose stars aren't going to be playing?
I mean, that's a great question. What do you think, Ari?
Well, you look at the Pelicans schedule. So after the first 2 games, they got a big game versus Memphis. That's going to be huge. Then you got the Kings, the Wizards with no Bradley Beal, the Spurs with no LaMarcus Aldridge, and DeMar DeRozan, I think, going into free agency, whether restricted or unrestricted, but is he going to put out max effort? Then you got the Kings again, and then the Magic. So I think I take Amber's point, and also I think Memphis's last game is against the Bucks, which there's no way anyone on the Bucks is going to be playing in that game. But for the most part, the teams making the playoffs, they've got all this rust. They actually need to tune up. Now, whether the stars play the whole time or not, they're going to be going full out. Whereas a team like the Suns, the Kings, maybe it's a lot of young guys. They know they're not making the playoffs. They're quarantined. Are they really going to be so into this game, or are they ready to kind of move on with the rest of their summer, which no one's traveling anywhere, but, outside of the fun place? So,
all right. So to translate this back to basketball cards. So Devin Booker, not high on him. Darren Fox, not high on him. These are guys who, by the way, their card prices have gone up a tremendous amount in the last few months, like kind of leading into this 8 game. In fact, I'm going to call a couple of them up on the screen just to take a look. I mean, Devin Booker, he spiked back in June because a social influencer, not myself, another social influencer, Gary V, began talking about him. His cards have actually come back down to earth a little bit since then, but there's still a Devin Booker rookie card is going to set you back $450, whereas that card would have set you back $150 back in April. And so I don't know what the buildup and excitement is for, because I don't think it's for these 8 games. And then likewise, Darren Fox, I mean, he's been going up and up. His cards were $90 back in April. We're looking at his 2017 Prism base, PSA 10, and these cards are now $180 or so. So we're talking about that one kind of doubling. Now, of course, that has been the norm with a lot of basketball cards. This last 90 days, we've seen probably the vast majority of basketball cards double in price. But some of these players who, don't have the opportunity for much postseason success, the price increases in those guys interest me a lot less than the guys who actually have the opportunity potentially to make some noise in this postseason, because those are the guys who could see their cards continue to double over the course of, the upcoming few weeks here. So
yeah, and I think Darren Fox he's coming on. I mean, I think he tweaked his ankle, so he's coming. I know he's not playing in the scrimmage tomorrow night against the Heat, so he, I believe he is coming. He might be nursing that injury a little bit. I know they're going to take it really easy with him, so you might see him even less than you otherwise would. And with Devin Booker, now he said something interesting this week where he said that he's really tired of playing ping pong with his friends and he wants to play some basketball. And I do wonder how many of these guys feel that way at this point, because again, the fun place. It looks like those guys are actually having a good time. They're like shotgunning beers and they're playing some serious ping pong against one another. But I wonder how many of them at this point are just itching to get it back on the court. And so maybe you'll see a better performance out of some of those guys just for that very reason, even if they have no hope of actually making the playoffs.
And I think Devin Booker, like when the lights come on, that guy shows up. Now, it doesn't usually translate to wins, but you think about when he dropped 70 on the Celtics, also in a loss a couple of years ago. But if I don't see the Suns making a run to make the playoffs, but if there's anyone who could take advantage of 8 games and put up huge numbers and not get any wins out of it, certainly is Devin Booker. And then beyond that, you just start to see online, Twitter, it seems like there's a groundswell for trade rumors around him. Maybe he goes somewhere in the offseason, but if he moves to a bigger market, you could obviously see a spike.
You have Devin Booker going to the Knicks, Ari? Is that where you have Devin Booker going?
I would
Ari has everyone going to the Knicks.
Everyone. He could be going to the Timberwolves. He could be pairing up with Cat. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff out there. I know nothing. I know
as you mentioned big market, though. I did notice that.
I don't think Cat can live in Minnesota for much longer. He's got to get out of there. He's probably going to the Knicks, too. They're all going to the Knicks.
Of course.
Listen, Leon Rose, he's got agent connections. But if we want Cat, we can't hire Thibodeau. So it's going to be a give and take. Hey,
Kevin Durant made it to New York, right? Oh, the wrong team. Sorry about that, Ari. Sorry about that. So close. Didn't quite happen, though, did it?
The Nets are going to have 1 year with a new coach to successfully merge Kyrie, KD, and then Karis LeVert, Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, the young guys. DeAndre Jordan's going to get minutes. And then if that 1 year is a disaster, which it could be, then both Kyrie and KD can opt out. So I give it 50-50 that it works or is a complete and utter failure.
Well, they could just keep their apartments and go over to the Knicks and live in the same place. It'll be great. And then everyone's going to be happy.
Kyrie is dead to me. KD, if he wants to come, maybe.
All right. So I guess Devin Booker, out of all of the guys who are part of that, those teams that aren't expected to make it, maybe Devin Booker, maybe Damian Lillard, because you mentioned him earlier. But honestly, I am more excited about the guys who we think are going to be sustaining in the spotlight. And certainly we started to talk about how they've kind of rigged this schedule for the Pelicans, and then they've built in this like playoff for the 8th spot. Really, in my opinion, the whole design behind that is not for teams like, the Trailblazers or the Suns. The whole design is to try to get the Grizzlies and the Pelicans and to try to get Ja and Zion playing additional games together before one of them has to leave the fun place and the other, takes that 8th seed in the playoffs. So, what do we expect to see out of Zion and out of Ja? And of course, all of the teammates, because by the way, both of those teams are full of interesting players from a basketball card investing perspective. You've got guys like Jaren Jackson Jr., right, on the Grizzlies. He's an interesting guy. You've got guys like Jackson Hayes, Nikhil Walker, some interesting other rookies there for, I should say Nikhil Alexander Walker for the Pelicans. You've got Brandon Clark, of course. You got Brandon Ingram. So there's a lot of actual talent that could, be going against each other in that series.
Bring it on. I love that the NBA created these goofy rules. Why not? I mean, the league hemorrhaging money, obviously, because of everything going on with the shutdown. And if you could make a straight-faced argument that some of this makes some sort of sense, which they did, which doesn't really, but they did. Yeah, I would love to see a 2-game play-in tournament between, Zion and Ja Morant. And you talk about the collection of young talent on both teams. I'd be watching. There's no question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about your rookie of the year in Ja Morant, and obviously you'd probably be talking about your rookie year in Zion Williamson if he had actually played for the entire season. Again, though, Zion's not there, and I don't know. We don't know what's going on with his family. He left the bubble/fun place because of a family emergency, and I don't think we have any updates on that. I haven't heard anything anyways, and so I don't know. They said he was expected to be back, but how all the protocols are as well with the testing and everything else. And I don't know what's happening with his situation at home. So that will make a huge difference if Zion's not even there. And this whole plan, I think, on the NBA's part was exactly what you just said, Geoff, was to have Ja and Zion match up at least for some semblance of time before most likely Zion's team is no longer in Orlando. Because I think, frankly, the Grizzlies just being 3.5 games up and being in such a position. Now, I know they had a loss this week. I know Justin Winslow he's not going to make his debut for them. And some people were thinking that he was going to maybe be a wild card factor for them and actually helping them for real in these playoffs. I don't know if that's true. He can be really inconsistent, and he hadn't played with them anyways this season. And he's no longer even an option. So he's been ruled out for the season. So I think that really what you're going to see, hopefully, is a little Zion on Ja Morant. Hopefully he'll be back. Hopefully everything's okay with his family situation. But ultimately, I think you're going to see Memphis in the playoffs in this one. And frankly, that's all you're going to see. Like, I think, and then you're going to see a first round exit from Memphis. I mean, that's how the NBA is. There's not a ton of parity in the playoffs in the NBA. And frankly, I don't know if that's going to change in a bubble. It might change a little bit, especially in the East. I mean, there's definitely a wild card factor there with no fans, but I don't know if it's going to be as unusual as we're all imagining it is. At the end of the day, these teams are these teams.
Yeah, your prize is a first-round game against the Lakers, so congratulations, Zion or Ja, whoever wins that. Although from a basketball card perspective, the spotlight of a first-round game against the Lakers is actually a pretty big reward, because if Zion or Ja gets in that first-round series against the Lakers, even if they get crushed, which they probably will, if either of those guys have a 30-point game, dominating performance, anything like that, even if the rest of their team wilts away and does nothing, then I think, that's going to bring a lot of excitement. Card prices will go up because everyone's going to start speculating how great that player is going to be in their career and going into next year and all that kind of thing. And, Zion's card prices, I'm calling them up here on my screen, they've remained hot. I mean, they've been super hot the last few weeks. And even the news of him exiting the bubble, actually, it's interesting. It did cause a little dip. They went down slightly, like a card that had gone all the way up to about $777. Lost about $25 in value, not even that much, maybe $15 in value over the course of the next few days. But then it shot right back up again. So I think people aren't too freaked out by the idea that Zion, they think he's going to be back. I think that there will be some Zion investors who will be pretty upset if he doesn't make the return back to the bubble. I know the NBA is going to be really upset, so I'm sure they're doing everything they possibly can to get him back.
What does Zion look like right now? Does anybody know that? I haven't looked into that. Like, what does he look like coming off these 4 months of no basketball?
He's wearing a Bryant hazmat suit all day long.
Right. Well, I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's like wrapped in bubble wrap as well, because they've got to protect their asset. But it's interesting. These guys, all of these guys, any of these guys that you talk about, and with their card value, I mean, they're going to be coming into these regular season games or these playoff games, largely not training for months on end. And yeah, they're going to have some of these scrimmages to get their feet back under them. Zion's not going to have that because he's not there right now. So I wonder, Zion is a player who struggled a little bit with the LBs in the past. I mean, a little bit. So I don't know. Well, is he doing that pandemic eating? I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm just wondering. Are
you saying that the famous Instagram photo of him, like maybe there was some filters turned on? Because people went crazy about that.
People wrote articles about how he gained 15 pounds of muscle and lost 30 pounds of fat. But I think that might have just been based off of one photo. So we don't know. That could be, I don't know. My wife's got that thing. What's that thing? Facetune, where, things happen and all of a sudden she looks like, I shouldn't be giving away the secret.
Do not give away the secrets, Geoff. Abort. But yeah, did you see, and you guys, I'm sure you guys saw Luka, and he's like 150 pounds down in weight. And that's a guy who didn't even need to lose 150 pounds. I don't know what was happening there.
Wait, 150 pounds? Luka, 150? Are we right on our statistics here?
No,
this guy?
Yes. Have you seen recent pictures of him?
150? What? This guy's, he doesn't have 150 pounds to lose. What are we talking about?
He lost an entire.
Pounds.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. Jokic. I mean, the dude could have lost 400 pounds and he'd still be a big dude. But Luka? No, Luka didn't lose 150 pounds. We need a fact check here. Where's our fact check department? Go get an editor. This is inaccurate. There's no way this guy lost 150 pounds. I'm not buying this.
All I'm saying is some of these guys are out there losing weight and potentially losing muscle because they haven't been able to train up to their regular standards. And then some other guys might be gaining a little weight.
Okay, hold on. Pause.
What these players look like.
I just looked at the back of Luka's basketball card, lists his weight as 218 pounds. So the list his weight as 218 pounds. So is it going to be 68 pounds? What's going on here? Now, granted, this was this is breaking news.
This was a very scientific analysis by me, by the way.
Now I will say this card was from 2017. It's quite possible that he did actually pack on some pounds well after this card was, because actually that's 218 pounds and 6'7". Like that's not right either. That's definitely below where he was clocking in this past season for sure.
I will tell you that none of those stats are ever right anyways. I mean, I will tell you from interviewing these guys in person regularly, and then you look at their stats, you're like, huh? You know, especially with football, but with basketball as well.
Anyway, all right, well, let's talk about some teams that are going to matter, because we just spent a whole heck of a lot of time talking about teams that at the end of the day are not going to see anywhere close to the second round of the playoffs. And so, but that's exactly what the NBA wants us to do, by the way. But now let's move over and let's talk about some teams that could actually make some noise. And Amber, let's start with your Miami Heat. And that the Heat are a fascinating team from a basketball card, investing standpoint. You've got hot rookies, guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn. You've got your veteran all-world Jimmy Butler. You've got a guy who kind of, came a little bit out of nowhere this year, and his card prices have gone up like crazy, and Bam Adebayo. So you got all kinds of it. You got a collection, a mass of interesting players down there in Miami. What's going on?
I will tell you, and I am no sports card investor expert here, but I will tell you that Bam Adebayo, at least we consider him down here in Miami to be legitimately on his way one day to superstardom. Now, I know he is somebody who has flown very under the radar, and I realize that I'm sounding a bit homerific right now, being in Miami and telling you that, and he's somebody who has flown a bit under the radar, but I will tell you he is regarded as that at this point, like on his way to that. I mean, he's certainly not there yet, but has the potential for that. He is regarded as that around the league. So it's not just, a fanfare thing down here. I do think then that he's somebody for you guys to really keep your eyes on, because I think that he really, really legitimately has that potential. I mean, when we talk about another superstar, we're always trying to sell South Beach and bring in the next superstar down to Miami. Who else is going to take their talents down to South Beach next? When we talk about who we're adding, we don't talk about just adding that person anymore to Jimmy Butler. We talk about adding that person to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. We talk about how we only need one more piece now because we have those two guys. So we would have a big three is what I'm saying. Like that would give us the big three again. That's how people feel about him down here in Miami. Now there's a ton of excitement as well around Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn. You mentioned both of them. And by the way, I should mention that Bam and Kendrick Nunn, they have not been in the fun place bubble so far, and that's very unofficially, very obviously, but secretly, because they had coronavirus. Like that's what's happening there, because we had two players on the Miami Heat test positive for coronavirus. Nobody will release their names. Those are the only two guys who didn't go to Orlando. So those guys
all right, we got breaking news. You heard it here first. Put it on the ticker. Adebayo, Butler, coronavirus, card prices dropping.
They got the
Ezekiel Elliott is not.
They're going to be fine though.
Revealing that's a HIPAA violation. Oh my God.
Not though. HIPAA only applies to the government. People don't, or medical professionals. People don't.
Not according to Zeke. You can't reveal coronavirus stats for athletes.
But those two guys are supposed to be okay. They were supposed to be showing up for the scrimmage on Wednesday, so they're supposed to be fine. And so there shouldn't be any issue there. And I don't believe either of them exhibited symptoms, but again, we don't know it was them. So that's unofficial. But those guys, in addition to Tyler Hero, yes, there's a lot of excitement around them. I mean, Kendrick Nunn, you're talking about an undrafted rookie who really came out of nowhere. I mean, you talk about it. You said Bam came out of nowhere. I mean, talk about a guy who really came out of nowhere. That's Kendrick Nunn. Now, part of that is because he would have been a lottery pick most likely if he didn't have issues in college. He had domestic violence issues in college, and that really made him fall off the radar. And so he didn't get drafted by a team for obvious reasons. He got picked up by the Warriors. They ended up not keeping him. He ends up on the Miami Heat, and he's been a huge find for the Heat, and the Heat love those diamonds in the rough. But he hit a bit of a rookie wall And, that's to be expected. Not to say that he still wasn't good, but he was playing. I mean, he was still good, but he was like great the first half of the season. And then, these guys that come out of college, they play how many games in college versus the 82 in the NBA? It's a totally different ball game. Most rookies hit some sort of wall, and he did hit a little bit of a wall. I'm curious for those guys how this is going to go with all this time off. Like, that might obviate the problem of the rookie wall, where you hit the rookie wall, and normally that rookie wall would be carrying you well into the end of the regular season and into the playoffs. But now you've had all this time off. So now it's like a whole new season to you, a whole new college season. You've had that rest. So with some of these rookies, they might be really, really advantaged by that. And and Tyler Hero is a super exciting player as well. So the Miami Heat, definitely, there's a lot of excitement around this team. I mean, every year we're a bit delusional down here thinking that the Heat really have a chance here, but the kind of conversation that you're having down here is anything could happen in the bubble, and Milwaukee might be vulnerable because, no fans and no home court advantage, and Giannis isn't that experienced. And so it could be anybody's, for the taking. And then we also hear these things about the Heat with the culture and the family, and they're all there. They all wanted to play. There was never a concern about that. None of them ever had a conversation about opting out of the bubble. So there's that as well. So there's a lot of excitement around this Heat team.
Does Miami have the cap room, the capability of getting another big free agent? Like that idea of like, we're going to add someone to Bam and Jimmy Butler and get the big three back again. Can Miami actually do that next year?
Not next year. It would be in the following year, which is when Giannis is a free agent and when you have that big free agent class. I mean, so far they've really structured themselves in order to be able to do that. Now you hear other rumors about other guys who aren't necessarily superstars, but stars being linked to the Heat. Right now, latest, Victor Oladipo. He's been flirting with the Miami Heat the last couple of weeks. He's going to be, he is there obviously in Orlando. There's been confusion over whether he's going to play or not. He said he wasn't going to play, that he was just going to be there. And then he started practicing, and then he decided he'd be available for scrimmaging. So I don't know. It seems like Victor Oladipo might end up playing. He's coming off that quad injury, but he's there to be tampered with. A lot of these guys are going to be tampered with. This is tamper season for the Miami Heat. We are ready. We are in full tamper mode. The coaches can't do the tampering. Pat Riley can't do the, tampering, but any of the players can. So when you see, because also, by the way, these guys can go watch the other team's games. So I think we're going to see a lot of that in the stands. So when you see Bam Adebayo watching a game, chopping it up in the stands with Giannis Antetokounmpo, you know what's up.
All right. So,
Ari. I would add two things. One, I think Amber is the first Miami Heat fan in the history of the Miami Heat franchise to correctly use the word obviate. So that was great. I was excited about that. And then secondly, I have my own feelings about the Miami Heat and that traitor, Pat Riley. But no one knows the long-term ramifications of the salary cap and free agency as it relates to the economics after the shutdown. So there is a strong likelihood that the salary cap will be reduced, and there may be greater incentives for teams to keep their star players. We've seen a lot of movement around the league, which I would presume helps drive up card prices when a player moves to a team. There's renewed interest. If they go to a bigger market, if you go from a Milwaukee to a Miami, you become a big three, whatever it might be. However, that's because players were comfortable with shorter contracts, maximizing their leverage, and the delta between what your home team could offer you versus what the other team could, your new destination, was not that great. Now, if things change with the collective bargaining agreement because of all these financial losses, you don't know what those ramifications are going to be. So I think in some way that could be positive for the outlook for Bam Adebayo in terms of his card price. They might not be able to bring in another superstar who takes away a little bit of his shine. He could ascend to be the face of the team, whereas Jimmy Butler, who's got so much mileage on him because he plays so many minutes, as he maybe starts to go on a downward trajectory, maybe Bam ascends and he's the face of the franchise because they can't financially find a way to bring in that next big free agent.
You're confused because Bam and Giannis are going to be just fine sharing the face of the franchise.
Bam's apparently giving Giannis a bag of cash. This is like where it's like college recruiting here. He's like, he's got his bag man, and Giannis is like, getting the cash bag, and he's all of a sudden he's signing in Miami. Ari, you told me Giannis was signing with the Knicks, so why is Amber saying he's signing with Miami? I don't go.
I would never have said that. Never, because it won't happen.
That's where you draw the line.
I've given up on any sort of big name free agent. I just want Kevin Knox to not be so terrible. I want Frankie Smokes to learn how to shoot the basketball, and that RJ Barrett could make foul shots. We got to develop our young core. I love Mitchell Robinson. Don't let me sidetrack into this a Knicks podcast because the Knicks are irrelevant. So.
I will say this real quick. I'm joking about the tampering thing only to an extent, because I actually do think that this is going to have ramifications. I don't mean for just the Heat. I mean, just generally with the NBA, you're putting all these guys in a really weird artificial environment where they're all hanging out, and they're hanging out as friends. They can only hang out with each other. That's all they can do is play ping pong and play video games and hang out and watch games when they're themselves not playing. So I do think that actually might have, in a couple years or a few years, ramifications in terms of where guys want to go, because they're going to be formulating friendships. And we do know that's a big thing in the NBA, in this era of the NBA that we live in. These guys do tend to want to play with their friends. And so, we saw, and we did see it with the Heat. We saw the big three come together. That was a direct consequence of them being on that Olympic team together in 2008. If Chris Bosh, LeBron, and D Wade hadn't been on that Olympics team together, they would have never necessarily formed that deep of a bond, and then ended up trying to team up a couple years later. So we do see that sort of thing happening in the NBA. And so it'll be interesting. I think as far as the cap, Ari's right that this could end up being a huge hit for the cap because of the reduced revenue with the pandemic. But we have seen guys turn down the Supermax. I mean, we saw Kawhi Leonard just do it a few years ago, right? And leave anyways. I mean, we have not routinely, that might be overstating it, but we have seen guys turn down the Supermax in order to leave teams, even though the team that they were on was the only team in the position to offer the Supermax. So we have seen guys take discounts in order to leave. Now, of course, it does make a difference, to Ari's point, how big of a discount we're talking, and money does always talk. And so if the cap adjustment does affect that dramatically, then maybe that does have an effect.
And will players be as comfortable betting on themselves and maximizing their leverage in a post-COVID world where we've seen a complete disruption to everyone's way of life? A lot of players have turned down a lot of money to be able to move to a team, pair up with someone. Now, with kind of a greater uncertainty in terms of the entire economy, will they be more reluctant to eschew this big chunk of money that their home team can offer them? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And then obviously, for Geoff's interest, how that impacts the sports card investing market.
Yeah, so there's going to be ESPN 30 for 30 has written about this whole thing for years. Apparently the fun place and all this stuff, all these things happening here. We had a whole new season of 30 for 30s that are going to be down the road as a result of all this craziness. But this is all fascinating. So we talked a lot about Bam Adebayo. I want to look at his card prices real quick. So this is his 2017 Prism Basketball Silver, and people have been on this guy for the last few months. I mean, this was a card that going into about the middle of May was about $230. If we go all the way back to April, it was $186. And this card most recently sold for $580. So this guy has gone up 158% over the course of the last 3 months. So there's been a lot of increase. But then again, there has been an equal amount of increase with many of the players across the NBA. So just the fact that this guy's cards have already gone up, a fair amount doesn't mean that they could continue to go down that path stronger and stronger and accelerate more and more, particularly if he has a good showing this offseason or if there's a lot of excitement building around him going into next season. So it's going to be interesting to watch him and many of the other folks we've talked about. We talked a bit about Giannis. Let's talk about the Bucks for a minute. The Bucks are an interesting team because outside of Giannis, there's really not many players on that team. There's really not anyone on that team that's considered necessarily highly investable. You've got obviously like Chris Middleton. He's been a big part of that team for many, many years. He's actually a really good player, but his card prices have never really, bid anything significant. It's kind of Giannis or bust. And I've been very, very high on Giannis's cards the entire season. I felt that his cards were not moving the same way that they should, considering that he was potentially a front runner for a second MVP, and he's statistically got the best potential chance of making the finals out of the East and perhaps winning a ring this year. His card prices have been on the move, but it's been much more recent. I think people were sleeping on Giannis for a lot of the season, and it's really only been over the course of the last few weeks that we've seen a whole lot of acceleration in his card prices. We have seen a doubling in his card prices since the beginning of June. But it's people were a little late to the fold there, where you had other players like Bam who really started to see that rise happen before that. But his card prices have gone up significantly. Now, what do you expect out of the Bucks? And Ari, is there anyone other than Giannis who's kind of worth taking a look at from the Bucks?
So, and I know this isn't some sort of a hot take, but I think the Bucks and the Lakers are the teams most well equipped to make to the finals, and that the bubble only accentuates the strengths that they have. So I think it's hard to forecast how three-point shooting is going to be affected by A, all the rust and the long layup, and then B, playing in a small arena that's going to have some intricate panels and screens and no fans. So teams that have height and size, and also that determination, because obviously the bubble is not the norm. So who are the teams that are going to best avoid distractions? And the teams who've been on a mission all year. And that truly is the Bucks and the Lakers, who are not relying upon the three-point shot. They can get the ball into the paint. Giannis can get any shot he wants. So specifically for the Bucks, I do think that they are most likely to make it to the NBA Finals and have a good, strong chance of winning. In terms of anyone else on that team who I think moves the needle just as an NBA fan, and then in turn would maybe move the card market, I don't see anyone. I think Eric Bledsoe has been a disappointment in the playoffs. I don't think even if he, reclaims some former glory this year, if that will do anything for him. Chris Middleton has always been someone who I find that have zero interest in. He is a solid player, but he can also disappear for long stretches. And I don't see anyone on the Bucks that I see as like kind of an ascending player. I think it's all Giannis, in my opinion.
Yeah, Giannis is definitely the guy. What about Amber in the East, a team that I think the Miami Heat kind of consider the Celtics to be a rival of theirs, right? I mean, I know you had that Ray Allen stuff going on for a little while and all that kind of thing, right? So are the Celtics a rival, and what are their chances? I will say that Jason Tatum's cards have been some of the hottest cards of the year across all basketball cards. I'll call a graph up of him. But do you think the Celtics have any chance to put any heat on the Bucks?
Put any heat? Yeah, I think, and I like Kemba Walker on the Celtics team as well. I think this, and the Celtics and the Heat are definitely rivals. I'd say that was a much more vicious, fierce rivalry back with the Ray Allen era of Miami Heat basketball. And there was a lot more bad blood back then. I would say now, actually, the most fun rivalry is the 76ers in terms of, from a Miami Heat fan perspective, in terms of the better teams in the East taking on those guys. And of course, there's so much drama with the 76ers, and then Jimmy Butler, of course, and his time there. And then Jimmy Butler's best friends with Joel Embiid. So that kind of all adds to it. And we all secretly think that, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons hate one another. And there's a lot of drama in that locker room. So the Sixers are at least in my opinion, the more fun rivalry right now. And they're an interesting team. I don't know how they're going to fare either in these playoffs. I think that, frankly, it's going to be the Bucks conference for the taking. I do think, however, I don't totally agree with Ari, although I will say that I also, not a huge hot take, if I'm having to choose who's in the finals, I'm going to take the Lakers and the Bucks too, just because they are the best teams in the NBA in their respective conferences. However, I do think that this bubble environment really advantages the Lakers because of LeBron's age. You're talking about the best player in the world, but he's also 35 years old right now. I think then that having all that time off would probably make things even easier on your body. And we know that LeBron, he was playoffs, and then he finally got a little time off for the first time ever in 15 years, and came back looking super renewed this season and just monstrous like always. And now he gets these 4 months off as well. I think for a guy at that age and a guy as experienced as LeBron, so I think you could put him in any environment. You could put him in a high school gymnasium and he's still going to play like LeBron James. I think that the bubble is actually going to be an advantage to the Lakers. I think with the Bucks, it's going to be a disadvantage. And I think that because you're talking about Giannis not having that experience in winning the rings, and I do think he's going to get this back-to-back MVP that already makes him like a Hall of Fame caliber player in the NBA, which is incredible where he's at already in his career. But obviously he needs the rings. He doesn't have the LeBron James experience there. And I think that he would have been hugely helped by the home court advantage. And the fans in Milwaukee would have really rallied around that team. And they don't have that. And I think that's going to be a huge disadvantage for a team like the Bucks. I think the teams that are going to do best in this strange environment are going to be the teams that are most experienced, frankly. So I'm interested to see how it's going to feel. I think a bit like them playing in a high school gymnasium. I'm interested to see how that does affect some of these guys, especially the less experienced guys.
So I want to make a case. And I know, Ari, you're going to push back on this. I want to make a case for the 76ers. So here's my case. Last season, the 76ers were one last-second lucky Kawhi Leonard shot bounce away from winning the NBA championship, Ari. They would have won the NBA championship last year, assuming the same stuff had played out like it played out last season with Golden State. The 76ers would be your returning NBA champions. This year, they have certainly disappointed, but from an analytics perspective, I'm an analytics guy. I like 538, which is Nate Silver, ESPN.com, 538 right now. Their projection algorithm has the 76ers as the second most likely team out of the East, putting pressure on the Bucks. 538 is high on the 76ers. They were high on the 76ers before the season began. They called the 76ers the favorite to win the title. They're still high on the 76ers. And I call Joel Embiid my number one basketball card investment before the season began. I believe in that guy. I believe he can turn it on. His tears as he was walking off the court last year, those tears were real, Ari, and those tears had some special magic within them that are going to pull him out in the playoffs. And I think the 76ers are going to put pressure on the Eastern Conference. They are my surprise team. Maybe I'm just hoping this because I own a lot of Joel Embiid cards, and they could use the price. They could use the price boost. So please make that happen. Although I called up a Joel Embiid price graph here to look at. I mean, his cards have actually gotten a decent price boost in recent months, although not as much of a price boost as some of the other guys that we've looked at. That we've already talked about today. But I think the 76ers, maybe they can come together. Maybe the pressure of not having to play in front of those crazy Philadelphia fans that they know are going to turn on them and boo on them if they have a bad game. Maybe they play free and all this time off has restored relationships, and all of a sudden they come out and they're the team everyone thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, including me.
My first thing I would say is, have you seen the classic Adam Sandler movie, Billy Madison? Because that rambling, at no point did you ever stumble upon a coherent opinion. I believe it's, when he talks about the puppy being lost in the woods, that's what I got out of that whole speech, because my feeling is the 76ers are a disaster and they will continue to be a disaster. It will be exacerbated by the bubble. Brett Brown has been on the hot seat for multiple summers and likely to be fired regardless of what happens. Amber already alluded to it. Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons have been wrestling for control of that team. They don't fit very well together in terms of their style of play. And now you're going to move everything under a microscope. Everyone is quarantined together. And that, I think, is going to expose teams that are very determined, have very solid nucleus. They're going to excel. and teams that had cracks in the foundations, specifically a team like the Sixers, it's going to expose those cracks even further. Al Horford, we all love Al Horford. We're all Gators. Not a great fit. They lost too much shooting, and they can't space the floor. One of your best three-point shooters on the team is Joel Embiid, but you're not fitting really correctly together with Ben Simmons. So I feel in the East, I see the Raptors as, I don't know that they can challenge the Bucks, but I see them as being able to even challenge maybe the Celtics and being a strong number two. Again, they have the experience from winning the championship last year, good coaching, and a solid nucleus and a rising star in Pascal Siakam. And like we were talking about a little bit earlier today, I love Fred VanVleet, and he is going into his unrestricted free agent summer. And if you look at the free agents coming up, because Anthony Davis is likely going to re-sign with the Lakers, it's a barren wasteland. He could be the free agent prize of the summer of 2020. And if he goes to a team where he becomes the guy, the point guard, no longer splitting time with Kyle Lowry, no longer with Pascal Siakam or from last year, Kawhi Leonard, I think if you're talking card prices, that's a possible diamond in the rough. And again, not to bring everything back to the Knicks, but we have long been searching for a point guard who can actually shoot the ball, and we have money to spend, and there's not a lot of people to spend it on. So if he is the starting point guard at MSG opening night of the next season, you're going to see his card price, I'm sure, skyrocket.
Just skyrocket because of the Knicks.
Skyrocket.
Ari just said the Knicks have a lot of money and there's not a lot of people to spend it on. You know what that means? They're going to make a horrible decision and they're going to completely overpay this goofball and they're going to be regretting it for years to come. Years to come, Ari. Years to come.
It's not that great. Yeah, but I am actually with Ari on the Raptors. I actually really do like the Raptors. I think that they're a team that flies a little bit under the radar because, let's be honest, one of the best teams in the world, or one of the best players in the world left them, and they have overachieved this season, even though they're the defending champs. But I do think that that they really do have a shot, not necessarily a shot at taking down the Bucks, but in terms of being that Eastern Conference final contender anyways, I think the Raptors have a shot at making some noise. And I do think as far as the 76ers, maybe you can make an argument that this environment, although I have a tendency here to agree with Ari's thought process, that them all like living together and hanging out under extreme circumstances seems like not a good idea for a bunch of guys that seem to not get along very well. And Al Horford has even said that they have problems in their locker room. He has even told the media that. So, I mean, it's pretty transparent. It's not just us guessing what's happening there behind the scenes, but maybe there's an argument to be made that because they're not actually having to travel, and they had a dramatically different record on the road than they did at home. So they don't have home and away. I mean, it's all the same environment. None of it's really away. None of it's really home. And I don't really know what to make of the environment, but maybe that consistency in this really strange, unusual environment will help the 76ers because they did seem very affected by their environment.
I will tell you this. I'm going to break some news here on Sports Card Investor tonight. I live around the corner from Al Horford, and I can tell you that during the quarantine, Al Horford renovated his house, a lovely, lovely kitchen redesign. I can tell you this not because I've been invited in, but because he's got these giant windows and I can see in. I can see what's going on. And I'm not stalking Al Horford, but I can tell you a very lovely kitchen redesign, very nicely done. He appears to be refreshed by that. I think the neutral tones in his new kitchen have kind of given him a new sense of purpose. And I think Al Horford is just gonna come out like he's just gonna be completely on fire. No one's gonna be able to penetrate the lane against the 76ers. He's gonna be an absolute defensive force in the middle. And between him and Joel Embiid, you might as well basically be going against a brick wall. It's like the Great Wall of China, even though neither of them are Chinese. It's a giant wall that's just going to block anyone, and all they're going to be doing is like shooting these lob shots from half court, because that's all that can happen if you're playing the 76ers.
Well, that I might agree with you, because while Al Horford's in his beautiful kitchen, making salmon and grilled chicken and making sure that he's in shape and ready for the bubble, your boy Joel Embiid, who is notorious for eating completely unhealthy, even when he was crying last year, he didn't come into this upcoming season in any sort of shape. What's he been doing during quarantine? What's he been working out.
Listen, Jimmy
It's
Butler
gonna be
wouldn't be
interesting.
best friends with a guy who didn't have a good work ethic. My money has always been on Ben Simmons for not having the good work ethic. So I'm not with you. I actually like Joel Embiid.
I think the
I really
150
do.
pounds that
I'm not big
Luka
into
lost, according to Amber, Joel Embiid found
He gained.
that
He
150
found.
pounds.
It's
That's
possible.
right.
We don't know.
One of Luka's legs is now in Joel Embiid's stomach.
We don't know.
I'm breaking that news right now.
All right. And by the way, Ari, I like the Van Fleet pick. He is a completely under the radar player from a basketball card investing perspective. Nobody is chasing Fred Van Fleet cards. His cards are worth nothing really on the open market compared to all of these other guys. So if Ari is right, then maybe Fred Van Fleet becomes your value pickup of the year in terms of basketball cards, which means, by the way, by announcing that, just as I did, the prices on eBay are going up at this moment. So get in quickly before that occurs.
Pick 2002. You'll look back at this.
There you go. All right, let's talk about the West. The West I find to be maybe a little bit less interesting because you've got the Lakers and you've got the Clippers, who people feel are like the teams that are really going to fight out for this. And then most people don't really give the rest of the teams any chance beyond the Lakers or the Clippers. Now that said, you got some really interesting star power out there, right? I love the Luka Porzingis combo on the Mavs. I mean, that's a great team to look at. Interested to see what Donovan Mitchell can do and, what the Jazz can do this postseason. Obviously, you've got the drama of the Rockets and what they can do. You've got the upstart overachieving Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has really come onto the scene this year as a hot third-year player. And you've got, who else we got? Oh, we got Denver. I'm forgetting about Denver. And could there be a Michael Porter Jr. sighting? People have been excited about that guy for a long time. By the way, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, second-year player. I'm going to correct myself on that. Porter Jr., another second-year player. Could he break out? You got the Joker. You got Jamal Murray, who I was pretty high on before the season. He's been okay. Hasn't really broken out the way that I was hoping it would. Lots of other teams. But any of those, Ari or Amber, of note, or is it really just a Lakers and Clippers battle in the conference finals?
I would say my feelings on the Sixers apply as well to the Rockets. I don't think, they made a very unique trade to get rid of Clint Capella, and their whole style is obviously very reliant on the three-point shot. But if you look at the top 10 field goal percentage for three-point shooting teams, they're not even in the top 10 of the season. So if you're talking about rust, you're talking about layoff. Here's a team that hasn't had a chance to coalesce, learn how to play with one another, and they're super dependent on three-point shooting, and they can't protect the paint. So I don't see the Rockets doing well in the bubble environment. In terms of other teams in the West, Jamal Murray, he also last season in the regular season was kind of up and down, but then he was able to pull it together and had some very big moments in the playoffs. And he's a guy who tends to show up when it matters. So I would be interested to see what his performance is like when the playoffs start in the bubble environment.
Did you mention Donovan Mitchell in those names too? He's a player that I really like, who normally flies under the radar a little bit in the West. I'm kind of with Ari. You could have a conversation about the Rockets. Obviously, I do think, I don't know if the comparison to the 76ers is quite fair. I think it's more of the consequence of the fact that they haven't really had much of an opportunity to try to gel together, which you mentioned. I don't know if they have the same amount of drama that it seems that exists amongst the 76ers. But yeah, really, I think it's a Lakers and a Clippers type show in the West. And I agree with you, Geoff. It seems like the East is more interesting. Frankly, the East always seems to be more interesting. I don't know what's happening there, but it seems like the East is a bit more interesting just in terms of parity anyways.
Yeah, well, in the East, you kind of got the Bucks, but then you got a lot of other teams. Like, you really don't know who other than the Bucks is going to emerge. But then but then you got the possibility that a lot of those teams could give the Bucks some unexpected trouble in this environment. In the West, I just kind of feel like the Lakers and the Clippers are going to find a way to shut everybody down, even though overall you got better teams in the West. You do, a team like Denver is a very quality team. A team like the Mavericks, when they had both Porzingis and Luka going this season, which was, by the way, very rare. They, the way that their season played out, Luka and Porzingis together did not play very many games. And Ari, Ari, why did the Knicks get rid of this guy, Porzingis? I mean, he is a solid ball player. This guy is an athletic freak. He's a giant of a human. He can shoot well from all over the court, even though he's this giant dude. And him pairing up with Luka in the few games that they actually were able to play together, I mean, they had a lot of good stuff happening there. I don't know if it's enough to really, challenge the Lakers or the Clippers, but it's still a pretty interesting combo to watch in that Luka Porzingis combo.
I'm going to take you back a few years to draft night. Phil Jackson.
How could we forget?
Phil Jackson was ready to pull the trigger and deal Porzingis for Jason Tatum. And it ended up not happening. The Knicks backed out, at least those were the rumors. And then that same exact night, we took Frank Nicolina over Donovan Mitchell. So the franchise could look a lot different. And then I think Phil Jackson was let go the very next day. So we let him draft, and then we got rid of him. The trade, obviously, they were clearing cap space because, Steve Mills decided to sign Tim Hardaway Jr. to get him back to the Knicks after he'd already let him go. They sent him to an offer sheet, which the Hawks, I think they're still laughing about it. And of course, they did not match it. And so then you've got to attach a tax to get rid of the Hardaway contract, to set everything up to get KD, and deal Porzingis. The 2 draft picks that we're going to get from the Mavs will probably not be any good. And then Dennis Smith Jr. forgot how to play basketball. And then we didn't get KD. We didn't get Kyrie. We had the worst record in the league just in time for the NBA to change the lottery rules. So we didn't get Zion, and then we didn't get John Morant. This is just a disaster. But
disaster pretty much sums it up. I mean, obviously they got rid of him to clear that space to get KD, and then they forgot to even call KD to try to get KD, because apparently he never even got a reach out from them whatsoever. So he just decided to go to the Nets.
Worse than that. In the trade with the Mavs, they acquired DeAndre Jordan's corpse, and it seemingly would make sense. Make DeAndre Jordan feel good. He's boys with Durant. He's boys with Kyrie. Give him all the run he wants because we're terrible. Instead, they pissed him off. It's just the highlight of the last 10 years for me as a Knicks fan was watching John Starks dunk on Jordan in the Last Dance documentary. And obviously fleeting because we lost that series. But that's the pinnacle, honestly.
Now, in fairness to the Knicks, they did not have Luka in addition to Porzingis. So, they weren't going to win anything with just Kristaps, even though he does appear to be a really great player.
Yeah, I mean, Luka's amazing.
He's really amazing.
They complement each other very well. So I think the Mavs are dangerous.
They are dangerous. I don't know if they're dangerous in a 7-game series, but they're certainly dangerous. They're going to be a dangerous team for years to come. So, Ari, you're out there in LA. You're LA NBA Ari. And so if we're talking Lakers and Clippers, is it possible that Kawhi could, do what he did last year and just basically all of a sudden become the best player in the NBA and be the best player on the court in that series? Is that possible? Is it possible that the Clippers can get past the Lakers and just like Kawhi did with Toronto last year, surprise the NBA world, and we see them in the finals and potentially Kawhi holding another championship?
I think it's certainly possible. I think the biggest roadblock for the Clippers is the lack of size. Your best center is Montrezl Harrell, who is undersized and really can't kind of match up with Anthony Davis. So, but I think in terms of the types of talents that will, translate well to this bubble environment or to the layoff, having Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, 2 lockdown defenders who are constantly kind of nicked up, who now have had this time to rest, defense travels anywhere. So you show up, you roll the ball out. If you can play defense, you can play it. Shots might be rusty. People might not be in the same amount of shape, but Kawhi and Paul George are going to play D. So I think certainly there's a possibility. I think the Lakers are pretty thin, and they've now lost Avery Bradley, who was not a huge contributor. They lost Rondo, again, not a huge contributor, but it just, if they're out there relying upon Dion Waiters to do something, the Clippers have a much deeper team. And I think it's certainly possible that they could make it a long series at least.
So one thing I like doing is strategy that I suggest taking as a sports card investor is to think about, so you've got the teams that are the likely teams to make it to the conference finals and the NBA finals, and who is maybe a second or third option on one of those teams who's maybe a little bit more under the radar, so his cards have been largely ignored, but could have a breakout moment in the playoffs, in the finals, that type of thing. It always seems every single year this happens to some player. And honestly, to a degree, it really happened last year for Pascal Siakam. This year, we're talking about him as being one of the premier stars in the NBA playoffs. Last year, he was a little bit more under the radar and really had a coming out party alongside Kawhi Leonard. Who are we looking at besides LeBron and Anthony Davis on the Lakers? Is it like a Kyle Kuzma? And who are we looking at on the Clippers other than a Paul George and a Kawhi Leonard? Could it be a Landry Shamit or somebody else? Any thoughts there of who could potentially shine from either of those teams other than the expected two big stars on each of them?
I don't know that there is much in the way of someone who could kind of break out. I think Montrezl Harrell on the Clippers is someone to kind of look at. He plays with a lot of emotion. He's well suited to what they do, and he doesn't need the ball in his hands, but he does have a flair for the dramatic. So he can put up some gaudy numbers, and he's someone that if the Clippers make a long run, he'll have to have been playing well. So I think that's someone to maybe look at. Landry Shamit, I think most people were very high on early on in his career, and his career is still early, but he's kind of seemed to fade a little bit. And he's someone who seemed to have a lot of upside early on. And now if he had a breakout, it would be, I think, more surprising. And on the Lakers, I don't know who else you kind of think about except for the possibility of Kuzma. Amber, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm going Kyle Kuzma there, but really just because he's playing alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis, and those guys can make anybody seem great. I wonder, Geoff, how does that work from a sports card investing perspective? Like, even if Kyle Kuzma has a really great playoff run, he's playing with, the best player in the world. So is that something that's going to seem viable to sports card investors, or are they going to be looking at Kuzma and thinking, you know what, he wouldn't necessarily hold that value if he wasn't playing next to Anthony Davis and LeBron James?
Sports card investors and I should say not just investors, but sometimes also it comes down to sports card collectors, because in the sports card market, you've got an interesting split between people who are in the market because they're looking for profit opportunities and people who are in the market because they're collectors and they like to collect certain players. So your collectors are certainly going, your fans, let's say you're fans of a team like the Lakers, they're going to want to collect the cards of the guys who they feel made a really big difference within the playoffs. So really all it takes is a Sports Center, highlight moment is what it really takes. So it for Kuzma, it would take a, one night where he goes off for 30 plus points, or it would take, he hits the big three that puts the game out of range with, 28 seconds left or something like that, right? That would really kind of put him on the map and cause people to associate him and associate that play or that game or that series with the championship. And then that's going to help kind of give him an overall lift. Maybe not from investors because they're going to be thinking forward to but what's Kuzma really going to do next year? But certainly to collectors, that type of thing will help.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kuzma's that player then that has the opportunity to have, an exciting moment in these playoffs. I just don't know how sustainable it is, frankly.
Yeah. Well, sometimes one moment in the spotlight is all you need. All right, guys. So let's wrap up with the prediction. So you both already picked the Lakers and the Bucks to make it to the finals here. Those are the most boring selections ever. I, by the way, have the Pelicans and the 76ers. You laugh now. They're going to watch this video 2 months from now and call me a mad genius. So who takes this? Is LeBron holding another title? Is he going to win the first one in LA? Anthony Davis is going to be now a hometown star there, or is it? Does Giannis get his first ring? Who's going to win this?
It's something that I think Amber touched upon, which is huge earlier. LeBron is the best player in the game, and he's never had this much rest. Even if we hadn't had the shutdown, would have been more rested than ever before. And you talk about determination. He's been on a mission to get this ring. And now it's right there in front of him. In terms of a guy who just eats, sleeps, breathes basketball, the bubble is kind of made for him. He is going to, in my opinion, will the Lakers to the title. And he's never been fresher. And he was the one who actually stepped up and said, we need to play. So he was adamant that they needed to get this bubble figured out. And now I think he is going to, by force of will, win the ring. That's my impression.
How about you, Amber?
I want to choose the Bucks. I do. But I just don't think I can do it for those same reasons that Ari just alluded to. I think you're just going to get such a good version of LeBron because of all this rest. I think he's going to be particularly advantaged. I think it might be a disadvantage, a huge disadvantage for some of the younger guys. I don't know if you want to take time off if you're a young guy. You don't need to let your body rest. Maybe you just want to keep going, keep the momentum going, and that disruption in the momentum might be a huge hindrance to your success. I think with a guy like LeBron, frankly, it doesn't matter and his body needs it. And that age factor, we did start to see it. There was snippets of seeing LeBron aging, particularly last season, and then he did get some time off, and then you see a renewed LeBron. So I would imagine these 4 months are going to do that for him as well. And I think, like Ari said, he lives, eats, sleeps, breathes basketball. Everyone's going to be doing that in this bubble, but he's going to be the least affected by the strangeness of the environment. I think just based on his experience and his experience winning rings, frankly. So I think I have to choose the Lakers taking the title. But what's interesting about these playoffs is I do think that there are some X factors this season that we're not going to ever, hopefully, ever see again, because hopefully we don't live through another global pandemic here. And hopefully that will provide some of the added intrigue that maybe we don't necessarily always get in the playoffs. I think that it gives us an added benefit in terms of watching these playoffs. And I think, honestly, whoever does win, if it's the Lakers, if it's the Bucks, if it's the Clippers, whoever it is, I think you could argue that it was a far harder championship to win this season. I really do. I think that it's with everything that these guys are having to face, with taking all the time off, with the incredible disruption in the regular season, where this is going to sort of feel like a totally different season in a lot of ways. And then, of course, not being able to do it in front of fans, all the testing, being separated from their home environments for so long. I think getting through all that, whoever takes the title deserves an asterisk next to their names in the best kind of way, frankly.
I think another factor that, again, points to the Lakers and points to LeBron. One, LeBron, I think, cares deeply about the health of the NBA. And I think he understands the value to the league as a whole and to all the players as a whole for the Lakers to win a championship. I would presume that he thinks that way. It will drive ratings. It will be good for revenue. And it'll be good for the league. And beyond that, what has every sports fan been doing, for months? Everybody's been talking about The Last Dance. Everybody's been sitting at home talking about Jordan reclaiming the mantle as undoubtedly the GOAT. So has LeBron been sitting around stewing, waiting for his moment?
Absolutely.
I would think so.
Yeah, 100%. So. Also, let's not forget, it feels like 2.5 years ago now at this point because of everything that we've been through since. But Kobe Bryant, he only passed away a matter of months ago, and I think that also might be a factor in LeBron's head a little bit. Where if you could win a championship in that year in honor to honor Kobe in a Lakers jersey, there'd be no better way to do that than to do it this season. So I think that also could be a factor in his head as well, and a driving force.
Very interesting. I just called up some of LeBron James card prices here, and they have been going up. I just like Giannis bought a lot of LeBron James cards earlier in this season for similar reasons. What's interesting is his Topps Chrome cards on the top of the graph. They've really gone up. Goodness gracious. This was a card that you could have bought for about $6,000, $6,500 back in April. And really all throughout May, it was pretty flat as well. But that card just recently sold at over $15,000, a card that was $6,000 just a couple of months ago. His base top cards on the bottom of the graph have also gone up, but not as much proportionally. Those cards around $2,000 going back a couple months ago, now in the neighborhood of about $4,000. So, they've gone up significantly as well, but not quite as much percentage-wise. And certainly not dollar-wise as his Topps Chrome card. So anyway, it's going to be fascinating to watch. Ari and Amber, thank you so much for joining. Tell the viewers if they want to get this continued type of commentary from you. Amber, I know they can get it every single day because you're on the radio and active on social. So first of all, tell people how to follow you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at AmberW790. You can listen to me on 790 The Ticket. We're a Miami station, but you can hear us anywhere in the country on the radio.com app. You just go ahead and find 790 on the radio.com app. I am live on air every day from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern, but you can always listen to us on our podcast on the radio.com app as well. So check me out.
Check her out. And Ari, how about you, sir?
I don't tweet much, but my Twitter handle is Starks3, my guy right there. And my Instagram's private. It's a lot of pictures of me hiking around LA. I don't know that anyone's interested in that. But I encourage everyone to watch some of the shows I work on. Check out Jack Ryan on Amazon. It's a great show. Haunting of Hill House on Netflix. I did the deals on 2 of those and some other ones, and been working on actually a documentary about the 1992 Olympic Dream Team 5-part series. We interviewed Magic Johnson. It's phenomenal, and we're hoping to let people know soon where it's going to air.
Oh, that's big news actually for sports card investors. Ari just broke something in the very last minute of this recording that is a big way to end the show, because we all saw what happened to the prices of all of the players in the Last Dance documentary and how they went absolutely insane leading up to and during that documentary. So Ari is maybe hinting that we might see maybe Magic Johnson and the other players in the 92 Olympics team put into a similar light. Very, very interesting information there, Ari.
That's my hinting face. I stroke my quarantine beard just a little bit if I'm dropping hints. So that's just for the podcast. If you're viewing it, if you're listening, you just wouldn't know.
Yeah, you've lost it if you're listening. You've lost it. Folks, Ari, Amber, thank you so much for joining. I think the audience got a lot out of this, and I really appreciate it. And go Gators.
Go Gators.
Go Gators.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Amber and Ari. Go follow them on Twitter and Instagram. Again, I'll put their addresses up on the screen here. They're both worth a follow. And certainly check out the Virtual Sports Card Con 2020. It starts next Wednesday, July the 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I can't wait to have you as part of it. Subscribe to this YouTube. Hit the bell icon for sure so you know when we go live. And go to our website, sportscardinvestor.com, and click on the Virtual 2020 to register if you haven't already. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great next couple of days, and I'll see you back this weekend for a special virtual preview episode of Sports Card Investor. Take care.